The ringtone buzzed insistently on my desk, pulling me from the quiet hum of the city's skyline outside my apartment. I glanced down, a group chat notification from my brother, Josh. I froze. One glimpse at the thumbnail photo made my stomach sink. A rooftop adorned with balloons, a sparkling champagne bar, smiling faces, my brother's baby shower without me. My $3,783, the savings I'd quietly set aside for the celebration, had apparently been spent on this party, and I wasn't even invited. I smoothed the silk of my blouse, feeling the faint shimmer against my wrist, and tried to steady the tight knot in my chest. My apartment, sleek and meticulously organized, had always been my sanctuary, a place where I built the life my family never thought I could. My phone buzzed again. Another picture, this time a boomerang of Josh lifting his wife into the air, laughter spilling over like confetti. I sank into my chair, gripping the edge of my polished oak desk. Anger mixed with hurt, a bitter cocktail that made my temples throb. Yet, underneath it all, pride nudged at me. I had always managed my own path, made my own victories, and kept my independence intact. But this careless exclusion stung in a way that demanded attention. I let the hum of traffic from below fill the silence, inhaling the faint aroma of coffee from my mug. The city lights reflected on the glass, reminding me how far I'd come and how quietly powerful I had become. And now, staring at the images of the rooftop party I'd indirectly funded, I knew it was time to confront the truth, but on my terms. I remember the first time I felt invisible in my own family, though at the time, I didn't fully understand the weight of it. I was 21, freshly graduated, and full of hope, clutching a small box of my savings, just enough to help with my first apartment deposit. I had suggested a weekend dinner with Josh and my parents, excited to share my plans for a modest celebration after landing my first stable job. But my suggestion was dismissed. My mother, with her polite smile that never reached her eyes, said, "Oh, Sam, you worry too much. Let's let Josh handle things. You don't need to be involved." My father didn't speak at all, just nodded silently. And Josh, he smirked, that half-smile that always made me feel like an afterthought. I felt my hands tremble, gripping the tiny box in my lap. A lump lodged in my throat, and a sting of rejection shot through me. I wanted to shout, to demand recognition, but the words lodged in my chest like stones. That night, I walked back to my cramped studio apartment, my shoulder aching from the invisible weight of being overlooked. It was my grandmother, Nana June, who reminded me who I was. She called the next morning, her voice warm yet firm. "Sam," she said, "people will underestimate you. They might forget to invite you, or even try to use your kindness against you. But never forget, your life is yours to build. Start with one brick, one decision, $1, and make it yours." She pressed a small silver locket into my hand, a family heirloom with her picture inside. "This is a reminder, girl. You carry the strength of generations. Don't let anyone steal your spark." That locket sat against my chest that night as I made a choice. No more waiting for recognition. No more quietly hoping my family would see me. I would create my own space, my own success. That night, I drafted my first plan, my first budget, my first vision of a life built entirely on my terms. It wasn't easy, and I had no idea how long it would take, but for the first time, I felt the sweet thrill of independence, that quiet power that belongs only to those who dare to claim it. And from that moment, I vowed, no one would ever diminish my worth again. I threw myself into the life I had promised myself that night, one calculated step at a time. I took my grandmother's locket everywhere, its cold silver warmth a constant reminder that my path was mine alone. The first months were brutal, long nights at a desk stacked with invoices and contracts, mornings spent rehearsing presentations in my tiny studio mirror. I was learning to navigate a world that often underestimated women, especially women who weren't part of the established family networks. Then came Margaret. She was a seasoned entrepreneur, sharp as a tack and unafraid to tell me when I was being naive. "Sam," she said one afternoon over coffee, The cafe smelling of roasted beans and parchment paper. You're playing small. Stop apologizing for your ideas. Own them. Margaret became my mentor, my sounding board, the one person who saw the potential in me before the rest of the world did. Under her guidance, I learned to pitch with confidence, negotiate with poise, and spot opportunities that others overlooked. I started small, freelance projects that paid enough to cover rent and utilities. But I saved meticulously, reinvesting every extra dollar back into my burgeoning business. I faced rejection almost daily. Clients who doubted my age, colleagues who dismissed my ideas, even friends who casually joked I was dreaming too big. Each disappointment felt heavy, but I refused to let it define me. The first breakthrough came unexpectedly. A client I had almost given up on called back, impressed by a proposal I'd crafted over sleepless nights. That contract turned into another, then another, until I had enough momentum to finally launch my own consultancy. My independence became financial power, and financial power became the quiet satisfaction of control. I kept my success hidden from my family. On social media, I posted safe, vague updates, photos of coffee cups, city skylines, and occasional work meetings. Nothing extravagant, nothing that would betray the hours of blood, sweat, and tears behind my calm, polished exterior. Even my closest friends didn't know the full extent of my earnings, the clients I had secured, or the office I finally leased downtown, its floor-to-ceiling windows framing the city like a trophy. I liked it that way. There was a strange, satisfying thrill in quietly outgrowing the family that had once overlooked me. I could watch them underestimate me and smile, knowing the truth, that I had built a life that was untouchable, one they could never diminish. And yet, a small part of me still ached for acknowledgement. That ache simmered quietly beneath the surface, a reminder that some battles are won not for revenge, but for peace and self-respect. Every success, every milestone, every quiet victory became my own. And when I glanced down at my grandmother's locket in the mirror each morning, I didn't just see a face from the past, I saw the woman I had fought to become. The invitation I sent was brief, but intentional. Come by my office tomorrow at 3 p.m. There's something I'd like you to see. My hands didn't tremble as I typed it, though my heart raced with anticipation. I wanted Josh and my parents to see me, the woman they had dismissed, in the environment I had painstakingly built. When they arrived, I led them through the polished lobby, past modern sculptures and the scent of fresh orchids. The elevator doors opened to my office, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the city skyline. Expensive artwork lined the walls, each piece a silent testament to careful choices and hard work. My desk, clutter-free yet personal, held a single silver locket, the one Nana June had pressed into my hands years ago. They froze. My mother's polite smile faltered. Josh's confident smirk disappeared, replaced by wide-eyed disbelief. My father's jaw tightened, as if struggling to reconcile the woman standing before him with the little sister they had underestimated. I motioned toward the room, letting silence stretch long enough for them to take it in. The gold-accented bookshelves, the sleek leather chairs, the portfolio of clients and projects displayed on the coffee table. All of it was mine. Every contract, every victory, every sleepless night had led to this moment. Finally, I spoke, my voice calm, measured, and unmistakably authoritative. I see some of you are surprised, I said. Perhaps because you assumed I couldn't, wouldn't, or shouldn't succeed. Or maybe because you spent $3,783 on a rooftop party for my nephew, without even inviting me. The party? That was funded, in part, by the money I had earmarked for this very business. Josh swallowed hard, glancing at my desk as if hoping the numbers would vanish. Sam, we didn't. You didn't what? I interrupted, my tone firm but not cruel. You didn't include me? You spent my money without asking? I see. I let my words sink, watching the flush of shame color their faces. I walked them slowly around the office, pointing out details. The first major client, the signed contracts, the projections, and the awards neatly framed on the wall. Each achievement was a testament to resilience, determination, and quiet brilliance. By the time we returned to my desk, silence hung thick. I took a deep breath, letting the city's skyline fill the windows behind me. "This," I said, tapping the locket, "is what happens when you are underestimated, dismissed, and excluded. You build your life anyway. You turn hurt into power. And you never, ever let anyone else dictate your worth." Their expressions wavered between disbelief and guilt. My mother looked as if she wanted to apologize but couldn't find the words. Josh fidgeted, the bravado gone, replaced by the realization that I had quietly eclipsed the life he assumed he was still leading. My father's eyes softened, though the pride was tempered with the recognition of past neglect. For the first time in years, I felt that aching need for acknowledgement ease, replaced by the quiet satisfaction of truth fully revealed. They had expected to see someone still struggling, someone who needed their guidance or pity. Instead, they faced the woman who had thrived, independently, unapologetically, and on her own terms. I watched their faces, all of them silently processing the weight of my words, the reality of my success, and the audacity of my quiet rise. The old family dynamic, where I was the overlooked, ignored sister, had dissolved in that office. Now the power was unequivocally mine. I leaned against my desk, letting my gaze travel from Josh to my parents. "I'm willing to help," I said, "but on my terms. No more assumptions. No more taking me for granted. No more thinking my independence or resources exist for your convenience." Josh opened his mouth, stammering, "Sam, You spent nearly $4,000 without asking me," I interrupted, holding up a hand. "So, here's the deal. If you want me involved in your family life moving forward, there are conditions. Simple, but non-negotiable." I began with my brother. "Josh, you're going to take responsibility, financially, emotionally, and practically. You want me to be present for this baby? Fine. But you will respect my input, my resources, and my boundaries. No more assumptions, no more taking me for granted." Then my parents. "Mom, Dad, you've dismissed me too often. You will stop undervaluing my opinions, stop favoring Josh automatically, and start recognizing me as an equal adult in this family. That includes finances, celebrations, and decisions. You've had years of old patterns. It's time to change them." I could see the shock in their eyes, the slight shake of Josh's jaw, my mother's pursed lips, my father's silent acknowledgement. I didn't soften. Compassion doesn't mean weakness. "If these conditions aren't met," I added, "I will continue to live my life on my terms, without you in it. I've built something remarkable, and I will not allow old patterns to drag me back into frustration, resentment, or invisibility." I allowed a pause, letting the room breathe. The locket around my neck felt warm against my chest, a reminder that I had earned this authority and deserved to wield it wisely. Then, softening slightly, I added, "But if you're willing to grow, to show respect, to meet me halfway, I'm willing to share more than I ever have before. I want this family to thrive together, not just me surviving alone." Josh swallowed hard. My mother blinked rapidly, as if the enormity of their mistakes had finally settled. And my father? He simply nodded, slow but deliberate, as if admitting silently that I had always been right, and they had always underestimated me. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving a point. It was about establishing respect, boundaries, and a new dynamic, one where I could maintain my independence while still opening the door for growth, healing, and connection. And in that office, looking out at the city skyline that mirrored my ambitions, I knew the power shift was real. The rules were clear, the conditions set, and the next chapter had begun, on my terms. Weeks passed, and slowly, the family began to shift. Josh called to ask advice on preparing the nursery, his voice hesitant but sincere. My mother sent a text, a simple, "Thank you for showing me what I've been missing," and later brought homemade cookies to my office, an olive branch. Even my father, once silent and reserved, started checking in more often, genuinely asking for my opinions rather than assuming I'd defer. It wasn't instant, and it wasn't perfect. Old habits die hard. But I noticed the small changes: a pause before dismissing an idea, a genuine smile instead of a perfunctory nod, the way they acknowledged my achievements instead of ignoring them. Each moment was a reminder that boundaries and expectations could cultivate respect, and that growth sometimes started with confrontation followed by compassion. I often caught myself touching the silver locket, the gift from Nana June, and feeling a wave of gratitude. It wasn't just a keepsake, it was a symbol of my resilience, a reminder that every challenge, every slight, every moment of exclusion had been transformed into fuel for my own success. The locket now carried the weight of triumph, independence, and self-respect, a talisman that had guided me from hurt to empowerment. Looking out the window of my office one evening, city lights flickering below, I reflected on the journey. The woman I had been, insecure, overlooked, underestimated, had evolved into someone who commanded her own space, forged her own victories, and shaped her own destiny. And yet, she hadn't lost her capacity to care, to forgive, or to open the door to those willing to meet her on equal ground. I smiled, feeling the balance of power and grace settle comfortably within me. The rooftop party, the stolen $3,783, the years of being dismissed, they no longer held the sting they once had. They had simply been markers, guiding me toward this moment of clarity. And as I traced the locket one final time before leaving the office, I whispered to myself, a quiet, confident affirmation that would echo in any voiceover. I build my life, my rules, my joy, and no one will ever write my story for me again.